So if you are a lawfully registered gun owner, guess what? You are the most common law-abiding citizen to be at risk for becoming a felon. The reason why is because a lot of lawfully registered gun owners actually don't look up the laws or know the laws in the state or the jurisdiction in which they are registered to carry their firearm. So if the laws change, if they need to transport the firearm, or if there's some other change that needs to happen with respect to the firearm, they are unaware because they're not looking up these laws in their state or their jurisdiction. And so ultimately, when you fill out an application to either carry a firearm, register a firearm, conceal carry or otherwise, you acknowledge that you know that you have to abide by the law. So the question that I'll ask you is, if you have a concealed carry permit or if you have registered a firearm, when is the last time you looked up the laws in your state or your jurisdiction to find out if you're actually abiding by those laws? I would say that a lot of people don't actually do that. And that is what leads to a situation where someone can have no criminal record at all and now become a felon because they didn't know or they didn't abide by the laws in their state or their jurisdiction. So it's really important that if you have a firearm or if you plan on registering one, there are a couple of questions that you're going to need to ask yourself to make sure that you don't end up with a gun charge if you have a registered firearm. So the first question that you're going to want to ask yourself is, where do you want to permanently store the gun? Do you want to store it at your home? Do you want to store it at your workplace? Is there a permanent home for the gun? The permanent home of your firearm is really, really important because if it doesn't have a permanent home, then we'll get to this eventually, but you're going to need a concealed carry permit if you're going to be transporting the firearm from place to place. And so that brings me to my second point. The second question that you're going to want to ask yourself is, will you be carrying the gun between multiple locations? Is the firearm going to travel with you from place to place, from your work to your home, to your business, or otherwise? So if you're transporting the firearm, then it looks like you may need a concealed carry permit because once you transport the firearm, you are now having to either hold the firearm on your person or otherwise in places where it would essentially be concealed. If you're carrying it in your vehicle, you may need a concealed carry permit for that. So the second question that you're going to need to ask yourself is, where is the firearm going to be traveling? And is it going to be between multiple locations, or is it just going to be between your home, work, residence, things like that? So that's the second question. Now the third question that you're going to want to ask yourself is whether the firearm is traveling in between state lines. That's a lot different from you taking the firearm from one location to another within your state or your jurisdiction. So now once you travel across state lines, then you're going to want to make sure that you follow the laws with respect to transportation of a firearm and then also with respect to the state that you're going to be traveling through. So understand that, if you have a concealed carry permit, for instance, where I am in Washington, D.C., you may very well get on a highway and the highway may take you through Maryland or it may take you through Virginia. There's no way to get off the highway to store your firearm at home, right? So you're going to want to know, wherever you may be traveling, will you cross state lines? Because in those situations, you're going to have to abide by those states' concealed carry permit laws or otherwise where there are transportation laws. And now the fourth question that you're going to want to ask yourself is, what kind of permits or registrations will you need? And so this kind of brings all the questions together. If you have a firearm at home and you're not planning on taking it anywhere, depending on the laws in your state, you may just need to apply to purchase the firearm, or you may actually need to apply to register that firearm. So for example, there are some lenient states like Virginia. All you need to do is pass a background check in order to purchase the firearm. As long as you go through that process to pass the background check, apply for the firearm, you can have the firearm, at your home or your residence, right? Those are easy laws. But there are other states, and a lot of states actually request or require that you actually register the firearm. So if you want to have more than one firearm, you may need to register every single firearm. In some states, you just need to apply for one registration. You just need to have some type of registration on file. Maybe you can have multiple firearms under one registration at home. Usually the standard to have the firearm at home is a lot different from having to apply for a concealed carry permit. And so that brings me to the second type of firearm registration that you may need, which is a concealed carry permit. And so with the concealed carry permit, basically this means that you are taking the firearm with you places, whether you're putting it in your briefcase, your purse, traveling in your car. You're usually going to need a concealed carry permit in order to do that. If you're moving, you want to make sure that you're abiding by the transportation laws wherever you're going through. So for example, let's say you live in Washington, D.C. and you have a concealed carry permit in Washington, D.C. The concealed carry permit doesn't automatically transfer to the state that you're moving to. So if you, let's say, are moving to New York City and you have to travel through multiple states to get there, there are two things that you're going to need to look up. One is the concealed carry permit laws in those states, and then two, the firearm transportation laws as well. Now, I'm going to break this down so that everybody understands. When you're transporting a firearm, it's not enough to put the safety on the firearm or to render the firearm safe. There are a lot of other things and components that go into transporting a firearm. For one, you can't have it in the passenger compartment of the vehicle, right? And so that means that if you're the driver, you're the passenger, wherever you are seated in the vehicle, the firearm has to be somewhere else. Usually in the trunk is probably best. Now, the second thing that you also need to be aware of is that you can't have the firearm loaded. So not only does the firearm have to be in a separate compartment, which would usually be the trunk, but you'll also need to unload the firearm and put the ammunition elsewhere, right? So essentially you can't put the ammunition somewhere where a person can easily reach the ammunition and then load the firearm and then shoot, right? So it would have to be in a separate compartment from wherever the firearm is. A lot of people don't pay attention to these specific laws. And actually, if you Google it, transportation of a firearm, how to lawfully transport a firearm, it will show you right there what you have to do. But as a person who is either registering a firearm or who may have a concealed carry permit, it will be your responsibility to make sure that you look up these laws or talk to an attorney who can probably provide you with some guidance on what you can or cannot do. But if you understand where you're going to permanently store the firearm, whether you'll need to carry it between multiple locations, whether you'll need to carry it between multiple states, then once you answer those questions, you'll now be able to answer the question of what kind of registrations you'll need for the firearm, and then what kind of permits you'll need for the firearm, such as like a concealed carry permit or otherwise. Now, the final question that you'll want to ask yourself is hunting. Are you going hunting with a firearm? And in those situations, there are usually different types of requirements that need to be met just for hunting. But at the same time, if you're transporting a firearm back and forth from your residence to wherever you may be hunting, you also need to abide by transportation laws in that regard as well. So there are a lot of complexities to this, and ultimately it's really important to understand the laws no matter what you are doing so that you don't end up with a felony. And usually, even if you have a concealed carry permit in one state, if you go to another state and you're not registered there or you don't have a concealed carry permit there, in most states that's a felony. And so if you're a law-abiding citizen, it's really important to abide by all laws. And that means that you're going to have to keep yourself abreast of the concealed carry permit laws and the gun registration laws wherever you travel. I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope that if you are ever traveling with your firearm, you know what to do with it moving forward. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them down below, and I'm always happy to answer them. Or you can reach me on my website, mydclaw.com, and I'm always happy to chat with you further. As always, stay safe, take care, and I'll see you soon.